My name is Christopher Ball, and I was the author of this report called Start Right. When my colleagues and I published the report a quarter of a century ago, we wanted to remind everyone of the importance of early learning, which made the subtitle of the report. And a recent book published by Routledge called Early Childhood Education Redefined, which I co-wrote and co-edited, re-emphasizes that key message. Early childhood education, from the age of 0 to 7, is the foundation of human learning. Done well, it provides us with the tools we need for a happy and successful life. Done badly, it may contribute to a sad life of failure, crime, and possibly early death. It matters that much. Like the foundations and ground floor of a house, our early learning provides the foundation for our lives. Houses are built bottom upwards, obviously. The house of learning, likewise, is constructed from the bottom on 5 important pillars or foundation stones. The first is resources. What we learn, the curriculum, is the second. How we learn, which teachers call the pedagogy, is the third. Assessment and the partnership or lack of it between the home and school are the fourth and the fifth. If we make a mess of this foundation stage of learning, it is close to impossible to put things right later. Let me say a word or two about the first 4. Of course, they each deserve a good deal more than that before I speak about the 5th, the home-school partnership, or lack of it, which is my theme today. Resources really matter. Good teachers and good schools cost money. How much is enough? I like to quote the RSA rule of thumb, especially when I am in the RSA, for funding education. Here it is. Take the age of the learner, double it, and you will have the appropriate class size, children per teacher, for that age group. Children aged 3 should not be in groups of more than 6 per teacher in their nurseries. 5-year-olds in classes of 10, 12-year-olds in classes of 24, and I am 84. Do the maths. You get the point. We need to invest generously in the early years to ensure a stable foundation of learning. It will pay off later as the growing child becomes more independent and self-reliant as a learner, requiring proportionately less attention from the teacher. We are all, I mean the profession, the government, the media, and of course the public, obsessed with curriculum, the question of what they should be learning. And we're correspondingly negligent of pedagogy, how they should learn. But the how of learning governs the what learners actually master. We should revisit the question of good pedagogy and study the new brain sciences to help us formulate a modern theory of learning. The curriculum for the early years is easy to specify in general terms. Purposeful play, development of the condition of readiness to learn, and postponement of the formal learning of things like reading and number until at least age 6. We need to learn from Steiner education and from Finland. The 4th pillar is assessment. There are 2 kinds of educational assessment. They are called formative assessment and summative assessment. The first aids the learning process. The second often hampers and impedes it. Most teachers, I plead guilty, need to do more formative assessment to help their students. Most governments insist on too much summative assessment. Most students love formative assessment when their teachers tell them what went well, what went less well, and how it might be improved in their work. Done well, this is a key feature of good pedagogy. A-levels and university degree classifications are examples of summative assessment. Tests which measure performance for the benefit of an external audience, university selectors, inspectors, the Department for Education, and of course the Treasury. And of course we do need to do it, but sparingly. It so often gets in the way of good learning and good teaching. We might start by abolishing the GCSEs and replacing them with absolutely nothing. But my topic today is the fifth pillar of a well-constructed house of learning, the role of the parents. However, I want to go further than the traditional call for effective home-school partnerships, important though they are. I want to talk about the education and training of parents. Consider for a moment our systems of education and training. We train for jobs, we train for the professions, we train our sportsmen and sportswomen, our musicians and actors, doctors and teachers, and that is right. Indeed, there are no groups engaged in activities that society values. From the parachute regiment to Samaritans, I've done training for both, who are not required to practice ongoing education and training, except for two, our politicians and our parents. I will leave you to think about the novel idea of compulsory training and retraining of politicians, but what about the parents? Most of my audience will be parents or prospective parents. I wonder what you think a competent parent should know, what skills and attitudes they should have acquired, what experiences and values they should be able to draw upon before they begin the great adventure of child rearing, if they're going to do that job well, or at least well enough. Like most parents, my wife and I learned on the job, and by recalling what our parents did, which can be hard for the child, especially if your own parents were incompetent. Ours were not, I'm glad to tell you. Parenting is probably the most difficult and certainly the most important thing any of us will ever do throughout our lives. Surely we should train for it. My wife and I learned the discipline of tough love, the importance of never making a promise or a threat that you couldn't fulfill, the need to listen to our children, shared meals, rules for bedtime, reading aloud, family rituals at birthdays, I could go on. But in an era of rapid change, the wisdom and practice of the past may not be enough for the modern world. I think if I were doing it again, we would have a house rule that no adult should switch on their mobile phone while there are children or a child in the room. When privileged to address parents on that demanding role, I invite them to think of the word nestle, Nestle, and imagine the baby nestling at the mother's breast, which is, of course, the ideal. Nestle stands for 5 words: nurture, exercise, stimulation, time, love, and the environment in which we live. Get those things right and you're halfway there. Nurture includes, but is much more than just good nutrition, though that is so important. Appropriate stimulation, not just the iBox or the TV, is vital. Look at the nursing mother smiling at her baby and talking to her. T stands for time and talk and tenderness, as exemplified by that mother we are all imagining, or perhaps, if we were fortunate, remembering. L, of course, is for love, a word and a concept that few people really understand until they raise a child. It means acceptance, even when the child's behavior is unacceptable. Care at all times and lifelong. And trust, even though we know that most people prove untrustworthy from time to time. Love is a tough discipline. The second E stands for environment, both indoors and outdoors, where the child lives and plays and learns. It is a sad truth that while most children today enjoy a better indoor environment than their grandparents did, the external environment in the garden, the street or the park is a good deal less child-friendly than it was. We have sacrificed the interests of our children to the false god of the private motor car. I want to see three things happen. The first is a serious public debate in the United Kingdom, but perhaps spreading all over the world, of this question: what is the competence of a good parent? The second is the creation of a formal qualification, a diploma in parenting, available online and supported by classes on Saturday mornings, say, in nurseries and primary schools. And the third is a nudge towards good practice from our government, perhaps by making the new diploma a prerequisite for receiving child benefit. You smile, but I am serious. Good parenting matters and is fundamental to the creation of a good society and the success of the learning journey we must all make and take through life. Thank you for listening.